Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kieran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there.
I need to know, is this it? Is this the nirvana that we've all been missing? Is this what it's all about now?
Well, it's a really good question. That is the question as well.
That is the question.
Is this the nirvana we've all been waiting for? Greetings, welcome to another episode of the Guitar Smarts podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. This week, I'm finally getting to grips with the Helix, and I've got the full rig going, and we're having a proper discussion now on how it feels so far to have made this change in my rig, in my guitar setup, and all the things I'm discovering, and all the ways of playing and ways of setting up my rig, and the creativity that having this Helix affords me. It's a really deep dive, really, into what I've found so far. My first initial impressions of using this bit of kit. Anyway, come and join us on our social media pages. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Guitar Smarts and on Instagram as well, the handle at guitar_smarts. Now, if you want to support the show, maybe have a look at some of our merchandise. You can find us on Etsy at our Etsy store. Just go there and look for Guitar Smarts. And if you want to donate something to the show, you can do that via buymeacoffee.com/Guitar Smarts. Any donations made towards the running of the show is very welcome indeed. But simply just rating this podcast in your favourite podcast app is a fantastic way of supporting the show, helping us to get to the ears of more guitar podcast listeners. Anyway, that's enough waffle from me. On with the show. Well, Matt, it's good to be back because we've had a bit of a, obviously we've had a bit of a break for a couple of weeks.
We have.
So we've got some catching up to do because
we have.
I've got loads of stuff to tell you.
Great.
Well, I finally got to the end of my process of selling everything. Literally, it's isn't it weird, kind of like selling stuff? I've never sold stuff on Reverb before. I've always used eBay in the past. Reverb was a dream to sell stuff on. The whole process from start to finish to selling and stuff has been fantastic. But it's weird how I would literally go weeks without selling anything, and then one day I'd come along and I had 3 or 4 things would go. And it's bizarre how it happened like that, but I managed to sell everything. From a financial point of view, it worked out. I could have worked it out more perfectly. It's literally almost to the pound what I've sold has paid for all the stuff that I wanted to get. So I've managed to completely change my rig for effectively zero cost. Yeah, which has been fantastic. But I'll go into more detail soon. But what about you? Over the last few weeks, have you been able to play much? Have you been doing much guitar stuff at all to try and keep your mind off the COVID?
Well, yeah. So as you said, we've had a few weeks break because we both respectively had the dreaded COVID. I've just come out of my 10 days isolation, and it was pretty miserable and pretty horrible. So up until that, I was absolutely gigging full on and out there, probably not in the safest of situations and things, but you don't realise that until you get struck down with it. Have I been playing a lot of guitar? Yes, up until 10 days ago, and then I did a gig, got COVID at the gig, and then was laid up for the next 10 days. And it kind of made me realise actually that as much as I love gigging and as much as I like being back out there and playing music, I've got to be doing it in a way that makes me feel comfortable and safe for my kind of friends and family and those around me. And unfortunately, the band that I've been with for the last kind of 6 months or so, as much of it as I loved playing with them, it was definitely a wake up to say, actually, if we're not going to go out there in a way that is conducive to kind of the world that we live in now, and if we're not going to look out for each other and basically keep ourselves safe, then it's not an environment that I want to be playing in. So for the time being, I'm going to take a break from gigging, and I've let that band know that sadly we're going to be parting ways. And yeah, I think that's the first time that I've ever had to turn down gigs and not play with a band based on the risk of like pandemic infections. But it's certainly, I tell you what, it's certainly when you're sitting there like fully ensconced with the symptoms of COVID, and you think, actually, you know what, I can't do this, and I don't want to get this again just through circumstances that are avoidable. So it's meant now that I'm gonna pursue some different avenues. There are some other kind of musicians and bands that I'm looking at playing with, but I think I'll be making it very clear that I'm not prepared to gig in crazy environments that are just clearly not safe. So yeah, I've got some practicing and some playing at home to do. But yeah, over the last couple of weeks, I must say, I've enjoyed just having a break from playing guitar, if I'm honest. Haven't felt the desire or need to pick it up and really spend any time. You think when you're going to go into isolation with COVID that you might, just sit and just play guitar. I'm just going to play guitar for 10 days. Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's time to write the album. But I've had no desire to do any of that. It was, amongst many other things, just couldn't fathom the energy. But I must say, now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm kind of like, okay, I want to do some playing now. So yeah, that's been my couple of weeks, mate. A bit of a bleak tale, and a bit of a reckoning point for me in terms of, okay, do I want to be out there gigging at the sake of everything else? And the answer is no. So yeah, I'll be looking for some more musical pursuits now that I feel comfortable doing.
Yeah, that's cool. I was just going to say, actually, because it's almost like you've got an opportunity, haven't you, to kind of take a fresh approach to guitar playing again. Because over this past kind of 6 months or so, I mean, it's about 6 months, isn't it? You've been in that band?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Obviously, when you join the band, one of the things I remember us talking about is it being, like a hard rock band, and you sorted yourself out with a couple of new like Tokai guitars and got them all set up and stuff like that, and they're really nice. And I kind of thought, when you were talking about, doing less gigging now and having a break from it and stuff, have you kind of had the time to reflect on how being in this band has maybe changed your approach to playing, because you've set up your rig in such a way and got guitars quite specifically for that band? Have you noticed a difference in how you'd been playing guitar and approaching guitar?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of realization of that was, it was yesterday, actually. It was the first time that I felt the need to pick up a guitar after COVID. And I thought, oh, you know what? I'm gonna play a Strat, because I haven't played a Strat for like 6 months. Because you know what? I haven't, right? I mean, it's just been full on Les Paul rock shenanigans, and in fact, my entire pedal board geared up around that. And for so long, my pedal board and sound had been that of a Strat through the Fender amp, and all the pedals were conducive to kind of getting me those bluesy Stevie Ray, John Mayer-esque type tones. So I plugged in the Strat and into my pedal board, and the first realization was how different it was to playing the Les Pauls that I've been playing for the last 6 months, but also that my pedal board just was completely wrong for this Strat. There was like no usable tones that I really enjoyed, and when I looked at my board, it's completely unrecognizable to the board that I had, prior to gigging in this rock band. Everything on that board is set up in terms of signal chain, in terms of gain staging. It's all set up to work with the Les Pauls and to create, different shades of classic rock tone. So I was kind of like, oh, right, I might need to build a separate board. This will be my rock board. and then I'll have like a blues board, and I've probably got the spare pedals to do it actually. So it's changed my approach in one way, which is I'd realised how through getting the Tokais and moving my board over to be right for this band with the amps that I'm using, I'd completely, funneled my tone and choices into a very specific niche genre. What I will say though, is I was absolutely delighted with the rig that I was going out with for this band. I know now that configuration of pedals with that amp and with those Les Pauls, that is absolutely my versatile rock rig that was behaving, performing, and consistently as well. Every gig, irrespective of venue, I was like, yes, I've got my sound, and I was really pleased with it. And probably the most pleased I've been with a gigging setup ever, I think, in terms of just consistency at each gig and predictability, and how to dial in some slight tweaks and changes just with EQ to compensate at a venue. So I won't be dismantling that board anytime soon. I think actually I might just build a smaller, just kind of more bluesy board as a second board, and just keep this as that. So good question.
Were you still using your Fender?
I was,
on those rock gigs. You were, that still handled everything okay?
And it handled everything okay, yeah. So that was the kind of the test, because I love the headroom on that amp. I love the fact that it's got bags of power, and but yet it's still a relatively small, relatively easy to lug around piece of kit. It's not a huge amp. It's not the smallest amp, but it kind of sits nicely in the middle, and it's been really reliable for me. Plus, it just means I can just have different boards without having to then go and buy lots of different amps and things. So I wasn't tempted to go and get a Mesa Boogie or a Marshall just for this outfit. I was really pleased that I was able to get all of the tones that I wanted just through pedals, and that amp really does behave really well with different pedals, and you can get super rock Marshall-esque tones out of a Fender Blues Deluxe just by utilising the right pedals and the right guitar in front of it. It's easily doable.
Yeah, well, you've proved it. You've proved it brilliantly, and you're enjoying it as well, weren't you? So you're enjoying that sound, enjoying that rig. Like you said, you were lucky that you had something which I've been craving for ages, which is you had your sound and you had it at gigs, and you were enjoying your sound at gigs, and that's that's the thing. That was the primary thing that's made me do this Helix thing, changing my rig to be a complete modelling setup instead of actually having a guitar amp and pedals, is to not just kind of try that route, but to kind of try and preserve something for myself, which I don't get at the type of gigs I do, which is a sound for myself to kind of enjoy. But man, let me tell you.
So talk us through it. I've got to hear this, right? So what I know so far, because a lot of the excitement phase of this has happened while I've been in lockdown. So you've sent me a few texts and things, but so you absolutely, as you said, right? So you wanted to get that more consistent tone at gigs, but also to be able to hear yourself more clearly and have more control over what was going on in front of you, and you had this idea to sell everything and go full hog down the Helix modelling route, which I still puts a smile on my face. The fact that you just went, I'm going to do this. So you've done it, and by all accounts, you've done it incredibly successfully with your one in, one out principle. So you've sold everything, and you've been able to utilise that money to purchase this Helix. And that's pretty much where our discussions got to via text and today. So now I need to hear the initial impressions. I need to know how you've connected it and what kind of patches you've built. I need to know. Is this it? Is this the nirvana that we've all been missing? Is this what it's all about now?
Well, it's a really good question. That is the question as well.
That is the question.
Is this the nirvana we've all been waiting for? sorry to interrupt this really interesting conversation, but if you've listened this far, then maybe you should subscribe to the Guitar Smarts podcast. Pause the show now, go away and subscribe, and then come straight back. Let's get to it. Well, like I said, this is the motivation behind this we've discussed before, right? It's not just about me. This isn't about me thinking, and I still don't think that modelling or modelling equipment is superior to, the more traditional setup of a decent guitar amp. The problem has been the circumstances under which I've been gigging, and the circumstances under which I will continue to gig probably in the future. Actually being in a band I'm kind of committed to, with the same group of people going out gigging week after week, that kind of thing probably won't happen again for me, maybe in the future. But for the time being, I enjoy playing guitar at home, and I do 5 or 6 gigs a year, maybe for depping for friends in their wedding bands, and it's just turn up and play a set of music. It's not the same thing as, having my own band with a consistent sound or anything like that. It's kind of, there's a set of music I've got to learn and then play for, and the circumstances are often, or have been recently, such that having the time and the ability and the support from either the venue, the event, or the band itself to be able to spend time working on getting my sound right at the gig has just been non-existent. There's been no ability, and when you've got a more traditional setup of a guitar amp and a pedal board and different pedals, it becomes incredibly difficult to then get that feeling and sounding right. So really, going down this route has been about changing that part of things, because I've been like, what's the point of having a decent cab and amp and pedals if I can just never hear them and never get them sounding right at a gig, because there's no opportunity to do a sound check, there's no decent monitoring, because the events haven't allowed that to happen. So I thought, well, if I go down a modelling route, I can create presets, I can create patches, I can do various things, I can create a modelled rig that I know has a consistent sound that I can give to the sound guy over XLR, and I can monitor myself and have, and I always have the same great sound from gig to gig. That's been the ethos behind it. But cutting to the chase, going forward to having this kit now, having sold enough stuff to then buy, the modelling gear, which has been, like I said earlier on, incredibly successful. I was hoping at the beginning, I hope I sell everything for enough to be able to, buy the stuff I need. And it's literally been, like I said, almost to the pound, perfectly. And I haven't had the chance yet to kind of try it at full volume. I'm going to do that in like a rehearsal room next week, just get a rehearsal room for myself and go on, but I've been spending a lot of time researching how to best build patches, how to EQ things effectively so that things sound better, reading about impulse responses and how to get the most out of what's in a Helix. And I am honestly, I'm just utterly blown away by how this thing sounds. I mean, I've never enjoyed playing guitar this much. It's brought out more of a guitarist in me, and it sounds incredible. Now, you just mentioned, your rig as it is at the moment doesn't work for you with the Strat. No. I spent last night, I built a preset which I've called pub preset, because I thought if I do a pub gig or something, this is a perfect preset for it. It's just like a Fendery kind of amp with a few drive pedals and some effects and things, and it's in stomp mode, so I can turn all the pedals on and off using the buttons. Great. And I thought, I don't know if that works for my Les Paul, and it doesn't. So I just copied the preset and created it, and he re-EQ'd it and readjusted some gain structure, and now I've got a preset which is effectively a different rig for my Les Paul. That's it. But instead of building a new board, it's just another preset. Yeah. But I've got to say, one of the things I've realised is the most powerful thing about having a modelling rig like this it's not about the sounds that are available to you. It's really about that flexibility. I can really see now why these things are so incredibly popular with session guys and people that do a lot of gigs for a lot of different bands. Because it's not just about the different sounds that they can get, but it's about the flexibility of the various features. So for example, let's say I've built a rig. Let's say I've built a rig in my Helix, which is like your rig. It's a Fender amp. Sure. But let's say your favorite lead tone in your amp is actually with the drive, the drive on your amp up higher than you would have it for your clean sound. Now in your gig, you can't easily just walk up before a guitar solo and turn the gain up. But in my Helix, I can do that. I don't have to have one of my foot pedals assigned to a pedal that's in my rig. I can assign a foot pedal to pretty much anything. I could have a foot pedal that changes the gain on the amp up and down as I want it to. So I've got increased flexibility in my rig now that I can't have with an analog rig. Again, whether or not it sounds as good as an analog rig or not is not what I'm kind of getting to. I'm talking about. I don't. It's, to my ears, it sounds as good as anything I've ever had before, But I've only played it through headphones so far.
Yeah.
But there's things like that where I can think differently now about how I get my sounds. So I actually don't even have to have, for example, I don't even have to have a drive in my, rig anymore, like a model drive pedal. I can have two different amps if I want and use my pedals to change the mix and the gain structure of those two different amps for my different sounds, which again is something you can't do with analog equipment. So here's the thing now. Now you're starting to think, well, hang on, what else can I do that I can't do with an analog setup? Because I've got this to effectively replace an analog setup, but it can do more.
Of course. Yeah.
I can assign so many different things to different pedals. I can have snapshots as well, which is something that's really cool in the Helix, which is like a preset within a preset. So I can build a rig and that rig can be a single preset, but maybe I want to have a pedal that turns on my drive pedal, my delay and my chorus because I want a big lead sound. Well, I can just assign all those actions to one pedal. And that way I can continue to turn everything on and off if I want it, like you would with a pedal board. But it's kind of like having a gig rig, like your gig rig G2 or G3 where you would have presets set up. So you can do that. But again, you can assign things to those snapshots like MIDI changes and you can change, if you're going into a guitar amp, you could change the channel on your guitar amp through it. It's just so powerful, the different things you can do with it. So that's where I'm at with it at the moment. I'm trying to kind of think creatively about, what else can I do with this thing to change my sound? If I, beforehand, maybe with a guitar amp, like I said before, if you wanted a better lead sound, you might think, well, I need to maybe get a different pedal. Well, now I don't have to even have a pedal. I can just change an amp.
Yeah.
And then there's things that obviously I won't do with it, but I'm realizing you can do that because I'm seeing other people do. So there's a guy on YouTube called Steve Sterlacci, who's a US-based guy who's got a YouTube channel and he talks a lot about modeling. He uses it live. And now Helix has this thing where you've got two sig paths in the Helix. You can join them together. So you've got one long signal path, or you can make each signal path stereo, or you can just have them completely independent.
Sure.
And one of the things he does is when he gigs with the lady that he plays for, and she's a guitarist as well, like the country scene, she and him are going through the same Helix. So he's got an input for her, and then she's got her own signal chain, and he's got an input for him, and he's got his signal chain. And then they have presets for songs with different snapshots for different, like verse, chorus, and whatever. Yeah. And whenever he selects those snapshots, it's changing the sounds for him and her on two separate signal chains using two different amp models, different pedals and things. So effectively, he's kind of queuing up different sounds through different songs. And just with one press of a button, her rhythm tone's changing, his lead tone's changing, and then the next preset or the next snapshot is the next part of the song. How powerful is that? How cool is that to be able to have a system that's not just, you could do that for bass and guitar. If you were in a band and your bassist amp blows up, you could actually quickly set up on the Helix a separate signal path, unaffected by what you play, for the bassist with a bass amp in there that's going straight to the PA. It's just so powerful. That's the thing, that it's beyond. I think I looked at it at the beginning as a replacement for an analog thing. It's more powerful than that. It's beyond just that. It's, hey, we can sound like an analog setup, but there's so much more you can do with it and how you're creative with that. Yeah, I'm still circling that drain.
I was going to say, exactly. I remember this feeling well. At least the concept of this when I was into the whole Line 6 modeling stuff years ago. And I went out with the Line 6 Pod XT, which is the floor-based version. Arguably nowhere near as powerful or sophisticated as now what you've got with your Helix. But just in terms of principle of having like this awakening moment where you can go, I can literally create any signal chain that I want. And yeah, as you say, I don't need to derive my drives and gain staging from pedals. Now I can just do it by running a different amp head at a different setting, and all of the different configurations of cabinets that I could do with heads. So no longer was I limited to just thinking, oh well, if I want to have a Marshall sound, then that's going to be like, you know, a Marshall preset. It's like, well, no, you can take a JCM 800 head and run it through like a blackface cab if you want, and then, you know, model it to be mic'd up in a different way using different mics. And all of a sudden, your mind starts to explode at the infinite number of weird and wonderful combinations that you could come up with. So, but I remember a few things. I remember one, feeling the incredible amount of creativity and the coolness of just being able to one day think, oh, I wonder what this would sound like if I ran this amp with this set of, you know, configurations and this kind of signal chain, and you could go and do that, right? Yeah. So you can, okay, it's not the exact thing, but, you know, we're talking about modeling that is getting so close now that your creativity can really be kind of satisfied. So I remember that being infinitely cool. Then one of the other things that I remembered conceptually was just when I thought I'd figured out how the unit worked and how to best set it up and how to best run it with you know, either through a desk or through like a cabinet to amplify, all of a sudden I would figure out a whole bunch of different settings that I hadn't really fully appreciated or learned, and so then it would change my kind of whole philosophy on how so I was like, oh, I thought I'd got it all set up exactly how I should, and now I've realized that I was doing bits of it wrong. So there was the constant I guess discovery of different ways of using the piece of kit, which just constantly was fun, but also kind of blew my mind when I realized that there was still so much more about this thing that I didn't know, even though I was really like quite accomplished at using it after a period of time. So, and that, you must be feeling like this equal mix of like huge excitement, but also kind of I don't know, anxiety at how you're going to get to grips with all of this.
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit through that anxiety now. There was an anxiety at the beginning because it actually wasn't that easy to get it sounding great. You know, some of the presets in there are fantastic, but when you think about it, the factory presets are made by people with different guitars in different rooms, and you've got to kind of remember sometimes they're made there to just kind of accentuate an effect that might be available, or, you know, that's kind of like, you know, a showcase of what it can do rather than a bunch of really usable sounds. So you're kind of looking for examples of how things are made. But once you just spend some time, I mean, here's the thing, right? It made me realize at first that maybe I've come to trust my ears a little bit less over the last couple of years from not gigging enough and not really doing any sound engineering anymore like I used to. When you're really kind of forced to say to yourself, I have to make a judgment here. What do I need to do to make something sound good? Whether that's gain staging, whether that's EQ, equalization, volume, you know, whatever it is, you kind of get practiced at that when you're creating tones or if you're working with sound quite a lot. So when I've been first building sounds with this Helix, I've been kind of having to really question myself, like, do I really know what sounds good and what sounds bad? And in the end, I've just had to say to myself, well, the more I do this, the more I'm going to be moved by the sounds I make, and more I'm going to start going, okay, no, that does sound good, or that does need some change, or I need to experiment and think to myself, well, maybe this sounds a bit too dark, and then think to myself, well, what can I do? I can go into the amp settings and the amp EQ, I can bring the treble up, or I can bring the bass down, or I can go into global EQ settings. What can I do? Is it, you know, you start thinking and experimenting, and slowly I'm building that trust back up in my own ears. And COVID hasn't helped, by the way, because I lost my hearing in my left ear quite a lot from congestion.
A few people have.
It's coming back now. I'm feeling like my hearing in general is still down, but the balance is back. So I've been dealing with that as I've got it. So that's been an interesting thing, actually building some trust in like, well, what actually sounds good. And then, you know, I've been trying to replicate some guitar sounds as well. So trying and sound like things that I like, you know. That's one of the greatest things that you can do with some of this model stuff. Yeah, exactly. Is go, all of a sudden now I own all of these rigs. Yeah. I mean,
they're built into this modelled thing, but it's just like I've always wanted to know what my guitar would sound like if I plugged it through, whatever.
Exactly.
1950s, whatever. Yeah. So amazing.
That is the great thing. Like one of the first rigs I tried to build was with a Soldano based amp. I was trying to think, I get that Clapton late 80s tone kind of thing.
So I want to know this, right? So I want to know, and you can't be bashful or humble, because this is what everyone listening wants to know. What are the rigs, the fantasy rigs of artists that you have already tried, and which ones have you liked and which ones haven't? So clearly, for you, Matthew Oliver, the first thing you were always going to do was build like a Clapton Soldano rig.
Clapton Soldano rig. And I realise now that I can't do that without a Clapton Strat with less sense of pickups. And,
well, let's go shopping.
Because let's go. But that I've tried doing that. I was learning some kind of Robin Ford licks as well, and I thought, if there's any amp that you can't buy, it's got to be a Dumble Overdrive Special, right? You're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of kit there. So there is a Dumble model in there, but it's called the Litigator, the Line 6 Litigator. That's meant to be based on a Dumble circuit, a model Dumble circuit. So I've been playing around with that and getting some really great sounds out of that amp. But that's one of those amps which actually is great to set up with different gain structures. So rather than just having it as like a clean amp, and then if you want a lead sound, having a drive, you want a lead sound, then have a pedal that sets the gain higher in the Helix on the amp so that you get more kind of natural amp. So that's a really great sounding rig. I haven't tried doing a Steve Lukather type rig yet.
What? No.
I just haven't yet.
No. Well, I think your project for the week is you've got to surely have a go at a Lukather-esque rig.
There's a Bogner amp model in there, so he's currently using, I think, Bogners. Yeah. So I could put like a stereo Bogner rig together in there with some, tri-stereo chorus after the amps, and I could do all kinds of. And that's probably what I'm going to end up doing tonight. Now I'm already excited about it as I'm talking about it.
Definitely, that's the single best thing to do with any piece of modelling gear. Is just go right. I want to see how close I can get to some of my favourite guitarist sounds. It's brilliant. But it's a really good way as well of teaching you yourself. If you're new to modelling, which you're not, but for people listening, it's a really good way of kind of teaching you how to get to grips with the kit as well, because the beauty of it is the limitless potential, and the curse of it is the limitless potential, and you just kind of end up kind of just going, I've been playing the guitar now for 2 hours, but I haven't really. I've just been twiddling knobs for like 2 hours because I'm constantly trying to chase something. So one way of just stemming the madness is to just go, okay, well, tonight the way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to try and create, Clapton's rig and just have fun just doing that. So you kind of almost narrow the scope of what you're going to try and do on that particular session, or you're just going to go, right, I'm going to build a pub rig for with what I would take out if I'm playing my Fender Strat or whatever, exactly like you've done. That's a good way of just focusing the mind. Otherwise, as you say, you just end up circling that drain of kind of where am I going? Where am I going with this?
That is, you've hit the nail on the head there. That is the key thing that I've had to do to make sure I'm getting good sounds out of this thing, which is to really focus down on what I want to achieve and have something in mind for it. So these last two presets I've made, like I said, I called them pub preset because I thought, well, if somebody asks me tomorrow to go and do a pub gig with them, I want to have a preset that I can turn on with either my Strat or my Les Paul and know that I've got a range of sounds there that are suitable for being in a pub band, so it's basically a very slightly overdriven amp, Fender style thing that sounds great, with a few drives in front of it, a delay and a chorus and a reverb in the loop effectively of the amp. I've got a rotary speaker that I can turn on as well, which just sounds fantastic. Nice. So that's it. Yeah. That's all it is basically. But it just sounds fantastic. It's all nicely tweaked and I keep working on it, each day or every other day when I can, and just to kind of fine tune it here and there. But now I know I've got a couple of presets that work really well for kind of a standard kind of gig. And some of the presets that I built at the beginning as well, which I thought sounded good, as I'm coming back to them now, I'm like, oh, hang on, no, it doesn't sound right. There's things that aren't right in the gain staging. So I know I'm getting better at building these things, becoming a bit more able to trust myself, to trust that I'm making good sounds. But there's so much information out there as well, like I said, from people on YouTube, some people like Retschel and Steve Sterlacci, John Cordy, some of these people that have YouTube channels that really concentrate a lot on kind of, creating tones and do a lot of stuff that's based on kind of modeling. There's some really great information out there that really help you to kind of learn what things make the biggest difference in, spanning that last 10%. The Helix really out of the box does sound fantastic. It's 90% as good as kind of an analog system in terms of the sounds it can create. But getting that last 10% out of it is really a difficult squeeze. It takes a lot of time and an effort to really get it feeling natural, because what it is kind of, your guitar amp sounds fantastic, but when if you're listening to an album, let's say you're listening to, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say you're listening to John Mayall's Blues Breakers album, the Beano album from the 60s. And that's such a revered album from a guitar tone point of view, because it's one of the first recorded examples of somebody using a Marshall amplifier of a Les Paul and overdriving the amp to its extremes, right? And a lot of people will say, when you listen to that album, that's really the sound of a Les Paul and a Marshall, but it isn't. It's the sound of a Les Paul and a Marshall, a microphone at the other side of the room, cable, an old preamp, that's been EQ'd a lot. What you're listening to is a signal chain of many different things other than just what the guitarist has brought to the studio. And that's really how you have to think about building these presets, is what you're effectively building is when you take a guitar amp and a pedal board to a gig, what you're giving to your sound guy is part of that signal chain. Whereas when you take a Helix or a Kemper or a modeler or something, you're giving them the whole signal chain. You're saying, here's my amp and pedals, but also here's a microphone and a room and a preamp, effectively. I'm giving you a produced guitar sound now rather than just the raw kind of fundamentals. So you have to keep that in mind when you're creating your sounds, which is a good thing, right? Your sound guy's going to listen to it and go, it sounds great.
Yeah.
I don't have to EQ a microphone. I don't have to, sort it out for feedback. I don't have to ask you to turn up or down. You're giving me everything I need, but you have to think about that when you're creating your tones and your sounds as well. But yeah, man, I'm loving it. It's great.
So next steps is, did you buy a cab? Did you get your...
Yeah, I did. I got a Headrush FRFR 108. It's only a small one, but it's, the reviews of them are fantastic. And the great thing about it is effectively more like a PA speaker. Yeah. So I can use it in front of me as like a floor wedge. I can have it behind me. I could put it on a stand in the future if I ever wanted to do like an acoustic gig or something. I could use it as a single PA speaker. Just so many uses out of it. I haven't had the chance to really try it yet. I've got a case on order for it as well, which should come soon. So everything's all bagged up. But I'm really looking forward to December 4th, which is a gig. I've got a gig on the December the 4th with some mates for a wedding gig up in Hertfordshire. And that's going to be the first time this really gets tested in a gig situation. I'm really looking forward to it. So excited, man. So I keep spending a little bit of time, a bit more time with it, because there's things as well. I keep thinking like building sounds is one thing, but what if at the gig I need to make a quick adjustment to an EQ or something? I need to familiarize myself with the user interface. So I've been trying to spend a lot of time just questioning things myself. Right, from here, where do I get to there? And just trying to, over familiarize yourself with how to navigate it and get around. But it's just magic. I mean, it really is just like this magical thing. But I don't know if I'll ever go back to an analog setup, a more traditional setup, should I say. I really don't know if I will. But I mean, so far it's definitely been the right thing to do. And you should do it too.
In fact, everyone listening out there, you should do it. We're going to change this to the Guitar Smarts podcast, but only if you're into model stuff. Mate, I'm really tempted to get back into it all, and I'm delighted that first of all it's giving you the reward and kind of already early days the sense of what you were hoping to achieve, and it's brilliant that you've got a gig coming up soon as well to put it through its paces and try it out. I'm really tempted to. I don't know if I trust myself enough to go back into it, and by that I mean I remember the amount of time that I invested and spent building patches, building different signal chains and the Line 6 stuff, and yeah, really enjoyed using it in a live setting as well. But there is, for me, something liberating now about using a pedal board and a more analog setup, which allows me to stop playing at a certain point because of the limitations that are there. And I guess it depends on the personality type. Like, I'm massively compulsive and I get obsessed by small details and trivial details and marginal gains on stuff. And I guess all of us that are gearheads and into playing like with all this equipment have that to a certain extent. But I just know that the best thing for me to do to protect myself from losing like myself down a deep hole that I will struggle to get back out of is not give myself that number of options, because it would just be too much. And I'm quite enjoying the simplicity of well, that's the amp I've chosen, so that's the amp that I've got to go out with and make work, and those are the pedals that I've got on the board. So again, I've got to make them work and sometimes that's frustrating, because you go, I just wish it would cut in a different way, or I just wish that I had a bit more tone control on this bit, or I wish this pedal interacted with this pedal in a slightly better way, or with a lower noise floor, or whatever. But then you can't do anything about it. So then you just stop caring about that and just worry about something else in life. And that kind of works for me. Whereas, you know, if I went down the Helix route, I just know, because it is so versatile and it is so powerful, and the options are so limitless, that I would end up losing myself and not come back for a long time.
But you could, I mean, I'm going to be devil's advocate here and try and talk you into it. You could build that restriction into your preset if you wanted. You could have a preset that was a cranked Marshall and say, I'm just going to do this gig with that, and I'm going to use my volume control for everything. It's still, to my ears, the biggest thing that since the last time I had something that was modelling-esque was early Line 6 stuff, like a pod, you know, the old kidney bean thing, when I was a student. And where that let you down is in that kind of space between, you know, heavily overdriven and kind of crunch, where you would turn your volume down and you wanted to kind of clean something up. Couldn't really handle that world between, you know, clean and high gain. This can all day long, you know, setting an amp at high gain and then using your volume to kind of adjust things. It just responds exactly like I have experienced it with more traditional amps. So, you know, you could build that restriction in and then at home play with, you know, creating crazy presets all day long. And then you can still go to your gig and just, you know, and you've got a Variax. Right? I don't know if the Variax you've got would still work with a Helix, but that's another thing. You know, if you owned a Variax guitar, you can plug that into the Helix, and then, you know, your volume control on your Variax, you can change that to the gain control on the amp in your thing if you want. How cool is that?
It is super cool. It is like it's amazing, and it's for all those reasons why I daren't let myself go down that route, because I know how cool that could be. And it will consume me in a way where I will just want to try everything, and I won't have the discipline to just limit myself. But having said that, having chatted to you, it has definitely made me think I'm gonna dig out the old Line 6 stuff and the Variax. I'm gonna do it this weekend and just plug it all back in and just see. And if it all of a sudden relights a flame of like, this is really cool, I've missed all of this, then maybe I'll start looking at maybe I'll sell the old stuff like you did and maybe upgrade it to a little Helix of some description, just just to have that. So I am really tempted. I got
to give a shout out as well to Rory Harvey, who I'd spoken to a lot since getting the Helix, because he's obviously used the Helix floor for a long time. He's now also got the Helix Stomp XL, which is a smaller version, less DSP. You can just do one signal path rather than the two. You can with the full, but he's got that because he's doing a lot more fly gigs now. So he's just flying out with a guitar and that in the gig bag, and that's it. But he's been really helpful in terms of giving ideas on how to work around, certain aspects of it, how to EQ things well so that things sound more natural, so you get more of a room feel, some of the settings that are good to look at to change to help you, help make things feel more like an amp than it does really like a digital thing. And so thank you, Rory, for that. It's really, really helpful. But I'm just, like I said at the start, I'm blown away at the possibilities and finding more and more that having a focused approach to kind of tone crafting really helps you get the most out of it. But keeping in mind all those different possibilities that you have that just aren't available to you with a more traditional setup is really makes you start thinking about where you can bring conveniences into your playing as well. Like I said about having snapshots, which is kind of like a preset within a preset, is really helpful. And, I can assign anything to any button. So, I could have my drives on the top 4. I could have a couple of snapshots, and I can have immediate access to 2 different presets as well. So I can have this like Houston control center, flight control center of buttons to press that just make life convenient during a gig. No more will I ever have to press 2 drive pedals, a chorus and a delay at the end of a guitar solo to quickly turn all those sounds off. I can just click a preset, or I can click a snapshot, or I can, make some easy little adjustments. And it's got an expression pedal on it, so it's a volume pedal or a wah pedal, or I can assign that to anything. I could assign that to my delay mix. So my delay can always be on, but I'll just slowly bring it in or out. It's just so much possibility. Got a looper built in as well. I'm just astonished really at the bang for the buck that you get out of it. It's great.
And that's the thing, isn't it? That versatility and that power, it comes at a really modest price these days for what you're getting, and in terms of sound quality as well. It's it's really tempting stuff. Well, I look forward to hearing some more bits of it. I can't wait to hear it. Let's see how you get on with building a pseudo Lukather rig out of it this week.
Yeah, I'll let you know how that goes next week. I'm going to try that tonight.
You definitely got to.
Well, he's got a lot of different tones. I'm going to try and think. For me, some of my favourite sounds of his were from the 7th one album. That's got so many tracks on that's just fantastic. But I love the tones from that. All those kind of heavily chorused, smooth drive tones. I'm going to try and simulate some tones from one of the songs and maybe do like a bit of a play along. And
definitely. You should, man. That is one of the benefits of this thing. Is like, how close can you get with modelled gear to real life rigs that costs 20 times, 30 times more, and would be completely impractical to own for the everyday musician. That's definitely what you can deliver through this Helix. It's amazing.
Absolutely
amazing. Cool,
onwards. Cool, man. Well, so plans for this week, now that you're out of lockdown and you're recovering and feeling a bit better, are you going to get back into doing a bit of practice at home, a bit of playing just for yourself?
I am. Yeah, there's a bit of stuff I want to do to some of the guitars as well. I want to get my Strats back up and playing nicely again, and get them strings changed on them. I might get myself a little board put together, which has just got some of the pedals that I really like using with Strats. So I might build a little second board this week. Contemplating getting myself back out there and finding a different bunch of musicians to play with. I have enjoyed gigging, albeit I don't want to be gigging every single weekend, 2 or 3 times a weekend. That's probably too much for me. But there's a couple of people that I want to reach out to and see if we can get something up and running and get something together for a little band or of some description. So getting onto that. And then, last night for inspiration, I just listened to music and watched a whole bunch of live concerts that I own on DVD or Blu-ray, just to kind of get my head kind of just back into to playing and thinking about what I want to be playing. And that was brilliant. I had a great evening last night, just sitting watching concerts. I watched some of the Santana Supernatural tour from back in the day. That was great fun. I watched All This Time, the Sting concert that he did in his villa. I watched that from start to finish last night. I was up until like 1 a.m. just watching live music stuff. That was a great concert. And then, as things invariably do, Where the Light Is, the John Mayer concert went into the Blu-ray player, and I watched that and just realised that there is no hope for mere mortals, and that I'll probably just sell all the guitars and just call it a day, because that's just a ridiculous gig.
Mate, you were just talking about like watching stuff and catching up on being inspired. Yeah. Have you ever seen a documentary from 2002 called Standing in the Shadows of Motown?
No.
Right. So this is a recommendation to you and to anyone who's listening who hasn't seen it. I haven't watched it for a long time, but it's a documentary about the Funk Brothers, which is it's basically it was the house band of Motown Records during the 60s.
Wow. And
it's an incredible documentary about these musicians who backed up, people like Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder and stuff. But what the documentary also did was get them all back together for a live performance. So the documentary follows, the different musicians and talks about their lives and, follows them in Detroit and stuff. But the musical performances from that band, with people like Chaka Khan, Montel Jordan, Joan Osborne, Ben Harper, there's so many different guests and they do so many amazing performances. I really recommend that. That's one of the best musical documentaries I've ever seen. Standing in the Shadows of Motown. Wow. You've got to go and get that and watch it. It's incredible.
I'm going to. Yeah, I will.
Really great documentary. I haven't watched it for years, actually. You just reminded me of it when you were talking about watching different things. It's a really great documentary. Yeah.
Oh, good tip, man. Yes, I'll definitely watch that. I'm fully into Motown. I was listening to some really cool Motown stuff last night as well. Plus the new Bruno Mars album that's just come out. It's got some very, very cool.
Yeah, I need to check that out. I like him. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah,
very innovative artist.
Yeah. There's some good stuff on that as well. Cool, man. Brilliant. And then yourself this week, more Helix fun, more shenanigans, and you've got to get ready for this gig on the 4th of December. Don't forget.
I know.
With all the playing, you've got to build a set of patches for that.
Exactly,
that's only 2 weeks away.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm probably going to build about 12 patches for it. I'll probably just every night go, I'm trying to improve it. I'll just copy it and improve it, and I'll keep playing around. And then by the time the gig comes around, I'll be like, which one was I going to use? So I had to be careful I don't overcomplicate my life with this thing. I've got to kind of commit to something. But there is going to be a lot of that, a lot of kind of tone shaping and kind of getting myself used to different things and experimenting. But trying to do a bit of practice as well, every week just on something, just to try and feel like I'm progressing in different things. But that's mainly that's all I'm going to be doing. Really, still just going to be playing with this Helix and getting more used
play with you too.
It's like Christmas. Yeah, there we go. That's me, man.
Cool, man. Brilliant stuff. Well, I look forward to catching up with you next week and seeing how you get on. And then we'll talk more things guitar.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it, buddy. Have a cracking week. Glad to see you looking better and healthy.
Thanks, mate.
And I'll speak to you next week.
Cheers, Matt. Good chat, mate.
All the best, bud. Ta-da, mate.
Bye, mate.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Come back next week for more. Really appreciate you coming and listening each and every week. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast, and also check us out on YouTube. We are available to listen to on YouTube currently as waveform only videos. So come and have a listen to us there if that's more convenient. Anyway, have a good week. Speak soon. Take care.